Hi, my name is Sokuzan, and I am one of Sokuzan's monks. Sokuzan so freely offers his love to us and his wisdom through these talks, and never asks us for anything in return. If you value what he does and what he is, and want them to continue, please visit our donate page at SokukoJi.org. Thank you.
When you forgive someone, I'm not talking about you step on somebody's foot and you say whoops, and then you say it's okay, it's okay, don't worry about it, or I'm good. I'm not talking about those little minor things that have to do with being polite and have to do with being respectful of other people and having a good social interaction. When someone gets off kilter a little bit and gets in your way, of course, then we want to do that. Those are okay. The one I am addressing here is when you think that you can forgive somebody for something that you can forgive. You cannot forgive. To forgive somebody for anything just perpetuates the confusion that we're dealing with all over the world all the time. Stop it. But don't stop it. If you disagree, then go ahead and do whatever you want to do. I'm not here to give you orders, but I am here to be very, very insistent. But I would say you want some help in that area. First, don't blame. You won't be drawn to forgive anybody. Don't blame. This doesn't mean you don't take someone who is antisocial or is causing chaos and remove them or ask them to leave your area, or possibly even incarcerate them. Although I think our legal system is based on insanity, not on justice. Based on power, not on kindness and respect for what people are going through. You have no choice. You have no choice what your life is going to be when you come into this realm of the humans. You have no choice. You didn't choose the shape of your ears. You didn't choose your intelligence level. You didn't choose whether you would be born deformed or not deformed. You didn't choose any. You have no say-so about that. That is dependent origination. It's after we get here that we start thinking we are somebody and we're going to get control of other people or even get control of ourselves. This is crazy. It's just circular, and it goes around, and we keep kicking ourselves in our own butt. Respect people's confusion. How do you do that? Start by respecting your own confusion. Stop trying to correct yourself and see the fundamental nature of consciousness, which can be very, very cloudy. Look at it anyway. You can do it. What else are you going to do with your life besides make some money or have a lot of power or push people around? Or the other one, that you can actually pretend you're a helper. In other words, trying to look like someone who's helpful. I'm not criticizing all the doctors and nurses and psychologists and people who are highly dedicated to serving others. Of course, I respect all of them. But there's also a lot of it where people are trying to appear that way so hard that they actually miss the patient that's right in front of them because they're trying to look like a helper. A lot of times you can tell by the tone of their voice when they talk to you. You all know what I'm talking about. You can tell someone is insincere and they're not present as soon as they start condescending to you with their tone of voice. They're there, they're earning their living, they're going to give you a shot or take care of you in a fundamental way, but they're not there. They don't see you. When you forgive someone, you are assuming that you even have the power to do such a thing. You can't do that. No one is on a hook. But you might imagine that they are, so you can forgive them. It's okay, I forgive you. Took me a long time, but I finally just learned how to forgive. What do I say to that? Bullshit. I know there's probably 15,982 people that would disagree with that. There are people on there who are talking about forgiveness constantly. You just have to forgive. No, that's an incredible misunderstanding. You have to see what it is. You have to see that when someone does something to you that harms you or hurts you or compromises your whole situation, that is coming out of a cover-up that can look like aggression, can look like passion, twisting things around, blaming you for something. And what are they doing? What is that person doing? They're covering up their own fear. All this ego territory is secured, run by, compromised, and loaded up with fear. Fear. Don't believe what I'm saying. Look at it for yourself. I'm pretty adamant about it, but I trust you to take a look. You might come back and say, you could do it tonight. You could come back and show me where what I'm saying is a misunderstanding. Go ahead. I will listen to you and we can talk about it. I'm not going to debate you. I don't debate anybody. I'm right, you're wrong. It's that simple. It's interesting to say something like that and look and see who's smiling and who's not. Yes, I am an incarnation of Bodhidharma, one of 1,522 million. So when you forgive, there's an assumption there that you are a person who has been harmed and you have the power to let someone off the hook. Don't do that. Don't do it. Don't do anything with it. Just observe it. Just watch it and let it show up as it is. You can do that. You can see your true nature. But this is, if you forgive somebody for something, you're not only covering up your own true nature with that kind of detritus, but you're also getting in the way of the other person seeing who they are. It's not that it will happen in this lifetime. It might happen in this lifetime. It might happen in on March the 1st, 2028. Don't blame, and you won't have to forgive, or you won't even notice it. Just don't blame. And how do you do that? You look at what something is without leaving it for what you think it is. You can do that. You have to practice doing that. Before you'll be able to do that, you're going to have to look at a lot of gunk. And what is that? Your own cover-ups. You have to look at them because you're covering up the light of your being. You're covering up the Buddha's Dharma. You're covering up the truth by fighting, by agreeing. Even agreeing covers up the truth. I don't agree with anything. That doesn't mean that if you're with a person where it seems like that's the only way you can really fundamentally help them is to go along with them, maybe you might do that, but it's situational. Just like when you face the wall, situational. You're in a situation where you're going to sit down and you're going to look at the nature of your mind. I call it shikantaza, sitting practice of meditation. That's handled lots of different ways. I think you can do that without becoming a Buddhist formally. I think it's much harder that way, but I think it's possible. So when I say, when you forgive, I'm also saying, don't do that. That being said, it's still situational. There may come times when you might have to do some of that, but be very aware of the whole situation of who you're talking to, who you're with. And as I said earlier, it's not about doing that with some kind of standard where you never say to someone, not only never say to someone, I'm sorry I stepped on your foot or bumped into you, or I'm sorry that I'm late for this meeting. And the other person's might come back and say, forgive you. I'd say, it's okay, we're good, we still have some time. So those kinds of things are social interaction, very necessary. So I'm not going into that area and saying you shouldn't do that. What I am saying in that area, you should be very aware that that's what's happening, that someone is letting you off a hook that they don't even own. Dependent origination is missed by that kind of subtle manipulation. It's okay, I forgive you. Or on the big level, larger picture or greater picture, people who are in relationships, marriage, intimate relationship, one who forgives the other person for something they did. Not a good idea. Very presumptuous to think you have the power to forgive anybody. There's no central authority anywhere. Anywhere. There's no central authority. Like Coben said many years ago before he passed, get your own authority. What did he mean? See what authority is. There is no authority. That's how you get your own authority. And it's like you always know what to do next. This doesn't mean that it doesn't break your heart to be around people who are torturing themselves and in effect torturing you too, or trying to. They just can't find you. So pretty hard to torture someone that you cannot find, you cannot locate. And what does that have to do with the nature of this whole situation? There is no location. There is no other place. There is no other at all. If you think something is over there, it's not. It's not over there. You're not separate from it. It might take a mirror to show you that. It might take the mirror of the teacher to show you that. Or maybe you can do this on your own. Good luck. Come on, give me some questions about this. Put me on the spot.
She is unbowing. I was wondering if there's any contrast with the way we relate to this teaching in relating to the teacher and the way we relate to this teaching in relating to just others in our life. Bowing.
I'm not sure what you're looking for with the question, but I would say everything is situational. Some people are not, some people you need to say, oh, that's okay, don't worry, I forgive you. So it's situational. And then other people, you wouldn't say anything back to them. You might just sit there and look at them. It's a situation that you're in. We don't set up standards. You've heard that teaching for a long time, as have I. Is that what you were looking for, or is there something else you can clarify it for this old man?
Cheese and buying. I just was wondering if there's any difference in relatively relating to the teacher in this context, as when I'm relating to others, it's easy to get caught up in the forgiveness or the blame. But with the teacher, is there any form of receiving that should be considered first, or looking at as a teaching before we jump into the relativity of what the teacher has done or said? Bowing.
So if it's a true teacher that teaches out of what they're looking at, or what they there's so many ways to say it, out of their heart. That might be a little bit too romantic and fancy. It's not your blood pumping organ. They're teaching out of that, out of what they're seeing, not out of what they've read. Now, they might teach out of what they've read. They might use that. They might quote the Heart Sutra, the Diamond Sutra. They might quote their teacher. They might quote you. So that's all possible. But if it's a true teacher and you are truly a student, then everything the teacher says, does, is a teaching. Even if some people think that teacher is abusing people, please don't miss the opportunity to see this as a teaching. Don't miss the opportunity. This may not come again, this precious human birth. You can't just snap your fingers and suddenly be a human being again in an area where the actual teachings of the Buddha's Dharma is presented. There are many countries where people don't even know what this is. They might have another spiritual path. There's all kinds of spiritual paths that I think are probably authentic. They just aren't the three jewels. There's some other way of working with it that is still the truth. What further question on that, Cheza?
Cheeling, bowing. I apologize. It feels kind of ambiguous, but part of it is when if Senchu and I are relating, we might talk to one another about how we might do things that are more smooth, or something that's frustrating that we might want done differently. And I'm just wondering, with the teacher, should that be something we should be talking to the teacher about, or should we just try to receive everything the teacher is doing as a pointer of our own mind? Bowing.
Well, you might have to discuss it. Again, it's a situation. it's the situation is so complicated. If you try to go into it and explore it and find out what's true, what's not true from that point of view, that can be done to some extent. But the very surface of the situation is what one should be looking at. If you want depth, look for the surface, because that's where the depth is registered at, is right here, right in front of you. Questions are very good around this point, including yours, Sokuzan. You have more?
Greg Bowing.
Go ahead, Greg.
I've been struggling with this lately, Sokuzan. What about forgiving ourselves? I get that we're not to blame because of dependent origination, and yet I can't forgive myself for what I did to my wife. We were married our entire lives, and yet I hurt her so much that I'm having trouble forgiving myself for that. And she's gone, so there's no way I can.
You want some help?
Yes, I do.
She forgives you. She just told me that. She forgives you. She doesn't want you to worry about this. Don't worry about it. There's other things you can spend your time on, Greg, and one of them is face the wall and receive whatever shows up. So don't, because wait a minute, please, sir.
Yes, sir.
What you're winding yourself up in, that guilt or that feeling of missing, abusing her or doing whatever. It's not that you didn't do that. It's just that the causes and conditions that arise that create that kind of a space are dependently arisen. There's no self there. This does not mean that you aren't responsible for the whole shebang. You're responsible. Be responsible, but that's not guilt. That's the ability to respond, and it sounds like you're doing it, but what you're adding to it is personhood. You're adding a self to that, and it perpetuates the belief in a solid, separate being who can win or lose. You have to see that, and this is why we face the walls. This is why we look at the wall. She's good. She's good. I know her. What's her name?
Fredo.
Again, please.
Fredo, Fredo, or Frederick. But
so Fredo is good with that. She's not particularly concerned, but I'm sure it's kind of upsetting to her that you're spending so much time fretting. She knows all you have to do is just have it in your own mind that I wish I hadn't done that. I was a thief when I was very young, and I really regret taking things through that was not given to me. I just took things from people when I was very young. And looking back on that, it's a sad feeling to look at that. But I also knew that I was in a milieu of my own mind stream, and my own being tortured, so to some extent, by my stepfather. Not blaming him either, but he was at the mercy of his own causes and conditions, including not just how he was treated, but the particular dynamic that came in and manifested as a human being. The same thing is happening with you, with me. Consciousness is finding its own form, and right now it's finding human beings. But when this human being goes down, not only are you liberated, but it's as if there never was a human form. We're not exactly human beings. What we are is consciousness only. So plenty of room for more questions. Greg, do you have another question or more about that one?
Well, yes, thank you, Bowing. When I face the wall, and it's kind of a choiceless situation for me at this point, I tend to go into this rabbit hole. How do I avoid that?
Don't avoid it. Go into the rabbit hole. Actually sit down, the rabbit hole comes up, go into it. And just watch yourself go in. It's an awareness practice. It is not a success practice or an avoidance practice. Passion, aggression, ignorance. Don't go anywhere with anything. Whatever shows up, that's it. If it's a rabbit hole, and if you can sit there and look at the rabbit hole, then do that. But if you feel drawn into it somehow by some kind of compulsion, some kind of impulsiveness, just observe that. Be the situation that you're trying to get rid of, and you'll see that it is real. It is unreal, just like Alice in Wonderland. Unreal. You have to see. Yes, sir. It's awareness. It's awareness. Go ahead and feel the crappy feelings that you're, and tie those in with a rabbit hole and see that you can just do that. Just let that flow. When I say let, it's not even like let. It's not because you really have no power, just like you have no power to forgive anybody for anything. And that's the area. If you're confused about that, I feel very, very adamant about that from having looked at it for a long, long time. Go ahead, please.
Eric from Traverse City asks, if you are tempted to forgive someone, would it be more helpful to remind them they haven't done anything wrong?
I would just keep it shut. I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't do anything with them unless they out and out asked, or if the interaction brought that out of you, then that's a little bit different. But don't let anybody off the hook, and don't put them on the hook, and don't forgive them. Don't. Just receive. Stop producing stuff. Anytime you produce something, you're covering up your Buddha nature. And if you don't consider yourself a Buddhist, but you're just listening to this person talk, you're covering up your true self, your true nature, the deep, deep nature that can't die. The conventional word is eternal, but it can't die because it has never been born. The body's born and goes away. Another body's born and goes away. Another body's born and goes away. And your Buddha nature is never separate from those bodies. That's your true identity. Don't believe me. Go ahead and believe whatever you want to believe. Go somewhere else. But if you're here, you could consider it.
Zim bowing.
Zim, go ahead. I'll get back to you in a minute, Mahesh.
So then how do we work with the non-forgiveness of forgiveness?
Give me some more to work with there.
So yeah, I'm confused.
Good.
So because it seems like, they're really what I'm receiving is there isn't forgiveness. So then if there isn't forgiveness, then how do we work with that?
Well, as you heard me say previously, don't blame, and you won't even be dealing with forgiveness. If you don't blame, you'll realize that people, the atrocious, terrible, abusive things that they do are because they're covering up they're covering up fear. You won't even know you're afraid if you're just an aggressive person who bites everybody's head off or makes use of your police uniform to abuse others. You won't even know you're afraid because it's covered. It's successful relatively. It's just that you have at some point the body-mind complex, which is protecting you by your identity is so much with that and with the uniform or with the whatever it is you're identifying with. But if you see that, this doesn't mean you're going to go along with someone's abuse. You may do something about it. You may do something very deliberate that has nothing to do with talking to them. You might take their stick away from them. Possible. Also, you might work with it in a different way that's more structural with the society that you're involved in, or the community, or the Sangha. You might try to fundamentally help people rather than just make things worse by blaming. Don't blame. That's a standard Buddhist teaching. All dharmas, anything that arises has a dharma, is a law or a truth. And all dharmas are without blame. You cannot find the source for anything. It is sourceless because and that's the illusion. If you're deluded, then you don't realize it's an illusion because you're deluded by it. You think it's truth. You think you have to figure out how to handle it, how to not feel this way or get this to stop happening is causing this. Anything that happens out here that you think caused your feeling, it's a misunderstanding, a big one. You blame others for how you feel. You blame anyone for how you feel. It's untrue. It's not that if somebody's hitting you, you can't blame them, but still it's your nerve endings. Go ahead, Zim.
Them bowing, thank you. So then if we're not blaming them, what should we do?
Just receive everything that's happening. Live your life. Be kind to others. If you can relatively just be kind, especially to the people around you that are coming after you with a hacksaw. I mean, that doesn't mean you indulge them. You might have to pop them one in the nose. That might be the only way you can be kind to them, is stop them from being violent. It's like I've sometimes said, if you have a murder, there's a victim and there's a murderer. Which one would you like to be? If I say right now, pick one, you'll find out that it's half and half. Some people don't want to be a murderer, would rather be a victim, and some people would rather be a murderer. Than it's just an odd kind of thing that reveals the duality of any given situation. Some people, the bodhisattva, he, she, or they might say, "I'd rather be the victim so I can save that person from being tortured." And the other person might say, "Well, I'd rather be the murderer so that that person, the karma is better for them to not have to be a murderer." I mean, you can go into the so-called logic of the whole thing. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do anything unless you have to. And it's much easier. Then you won't be doing much. But when you do something, it's because you have to do it, because your karma says you're doing this. It might not talk in that kind of a voice, because that's more like my stepdad. I have to have a model for something. So do it with your awareness so that you're always present. It's heartbreaking to do that because you begin to see all the suffering in the world that people who are very violent are covering up. The people who are not so violent, they're more aware of the suffering. And the people who are completely Jainism, the Jains, Jains, ancient religion that started with what was it, Mahavir? Was that it, Shisho, or did I miss it? Yeah, Mahavir, back 100 or so years before the Buddha came along in India. They really went overboard with this peace stuff. They're not going to kill anything. They're not going to, I don't know everything. They, of course, were vegetarians, but it was really, really intense, which is, you could say it's helpful in some ways, but it makes other people so bad. It makes the other people so it builds up a intense contrast. Buddha Dharma is the middle way, not too tight, not too loose. Go ahead, Mahesh. Better be a good one and make it short.
Mahesh Bhavan. So this advice to forgive or not is given generally to people who are already thinking whether they should forgive or not, right? They already are thinking there are others, and they can decide whether to forgive or not.
What do you want to know? Just please ask me a question. You can go through that.
Right. I mean,
ask me a question.
I feel this advice is redundant because if you know others are a mirror, like the world is a mirror of your karma, then there's no question of forgiving. You already are not blaming. But if you think the others need to be...
You're not going to ask me a question, are you? You're just going to tell me stuff. Why would you want to just tell me stuff? Why don't you just ask me a question?
Yeah, my question is like, I'm finding it hard to understand how it is useful, this advice, don't forgive, is useful. Because if people are trying to decide whether they want to forgive or not, then they're already thinking there is self and other. So telling them don't forgive is actually not helping them because they'll say like that.
In your eyes, then I stand corrected. But I feel like you don't understand what I'm saying, and that's why you're correcting me. I'm talking about awareness, not a standard. I'm not saying don't forgive. I said when you forgive, you may feel like you're kind and letting someone off the hook, and so they don't feel so bad because you're not holding it against them anymore. The very nature of ego is showing up in forgiveness. The very nature of self-centeredness shows up there. So I would say, don't blame. If you want to not do something, don't blame. And at the same time, I would say, and you've all heard me say this before, when I say that, I know you can't help but blame. I can't help but blame. But if you listen to that, you realize that then you're really aware of how much you're doing slight finger pointing. Maybe you're hiding your finger behind you, but it's pointing right at somebody. That way you're aware of what's happening rather than you're coming to a conclusion or some kind of control, it's still an orbit where there's control and then it lightens up, and then there's control and it lightens up. Circle, 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 circle. Don't rest anywhere. Just watch the circles. This is awareness. More, Mahesh?
Mahesh bowing. Yeah, and the same thing. Yeah. I feel like if you tell them don't blame, that is
I
good
didn't
enough.
say that. I
But
said when you blame. This is what I didn't say. Don't blame. You're
Right.
making a big assumption.
Yeah.
Okay,
blame-
let's do this. Don't blame. I'll give you some help. Don't blame, Mahesh. All you people, don't blame anybody for anything. Then you don't have to forgive. How's that? Oh, you meant don't forgive. That's right. Okay, let's do that one. Don't forgive anybody any. Yes.
I'm not Mahesh bowing. I'm not able to express myself clearly. So yeah, we can pass this off.
Pass it off? Okay. We'll pass it off. Don't forget me, Mahesh. Is there another question in here?
Unbowing.
Weren't you the one that suggested the title of the talk?
Was it Ruby?
Yeah, it was your daughter. That way, you look a lot like it. Yeah, she suggested that. Did she or did you? Wasn't you? Okay. Okay. Well, go ahead. You can. Now that I put you on the spot, you can ask the question.
What is don't forgive encouraging me to do?
Look at it. Be aware of it. Don't blame. Don't blame. Somebody does this or that, you might see where they're the one who is acting in that way, but that is coming out of their own, especially if it's something that's hurting you, it's coming out of their confusion. So they're covering up. I'm not saying you shouldn't just get out of there and get out of that room or not even talk to them anymore, perhaps, if it's that difficult. Go ahead.
And so without forgiveness or without blame, things just really reek.
They would?
Yeah, just looks
Okay.
like a bunch of shit.
So without forgiveness, so you think forgiveness is helpful? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it seems helpful at covering up a bunch of stinky stuff.
Okay.
So once you get down into all the stinky, rotten stuff,
Stinky, rotten stuff. Go ahead. I'm repeating it because you're not very loud.
how do we stay in that? How do we?
Don't maintain anything. Anytime you're trying to make something happen or squeeze something out of something or wring some happiness out of samsara or out of this crazy human realm, you come right back to the first teachings of the Buddha. Life is suffering. He did not, as I've said at least 100 times, if not more, he didn't say part of the time life is suffering. No, it's suffering all the time. You, me, or us, quite often we're able to cover that up. Sometimes that's covered up with violence. So we don't suffer because we're putting the suffering on the person we're inflicting the discomfort or the suffering onto. Go ahead.
Unbowing, what does observing suffering show us about our true nature?
If you watch the suffering and you don't fix it, you don't cover it up, You just receive the difficulty, then eventually you will realize who you actually are, your actual identity, which is not separate from anything anywhere. The self-centeredness just melts away or disappears. And if it comes back, you see that it's unreal. And it will not be an experience. It's more like the lack of experiences. It's like the lack of thought patterns. But the presence of consciousness that is receiving everything everywhere in your body and other people's bodies. You're not reading minds. You're not interested in people's thought patterns. You're not reading minds. You are mind. And you're not separate from anyone else's mind. And there's no proof of that. If it's a spiritual path, you don't need proof. You're looking at it. You don't need proof that fire is hot. More?
Future bowing. I find myself apologizing a lot more lately,
Saying I'm sorry?
or even just having that feeling of being sorry.
Yeah.
And it looks like when I do that, I'm covering up something. I'm not wanting to make a situation worse. Is there anything to adjust there?
Okay, anything to adjust when you feel like you're apologizing quite a bit and you're kind of compelled to do it? And are you doing it to another person? Are you saying it out loud? Are you just feeling it? You're saying it out loud? Both? Okay, so it can teeter-totter back and forth between, it takes the pressure off you of feeling guilty because you're apologizing, but then you might be looking for some kind of forgiveness, and this same thing perpetuates the self, and then somebody is kind of in charge of your identity. And so they get to, it's okay, don't worry about it, I understand, it's okay. So, and we all do that. And everyone has their own version of how that shows up. It depends on who you're in relationship with and how strong that is and what the structure is of that. But it is about awareness. So it's not about not doing that. When I say don't forgive, I'm not saying that. I say when you forgive. I haven't said don't forgive. Well, if I have, then please forgive me. I didn't mean it. So what I'm saying is be aware of who that is. If you're going to forgive, you might find yourself saying, "Oh, that's okay." You might not use the word forgiveness, but you said, "Not a problem. Don't worry about it. You're okay. Okay, I'm good with that." Or I understand what you were dealing with there. Any kind of thing to kind of let them off the hook. I'm not saying that those aren't going to arise at times, but to be very aware of that and see if what is happening. You see the underlayment there. What is the motivation, the intention for even doing such a thing as that? It's about the awareness of it, not correcting it. This is why it's so damn difficult. And this is why ego is so good at just hiding out everywhere. It can hide under passion. It can hide under aggression. It can hide under ignorance. And it can show up as saintly. It can show up as holy. It can show up so many different ways. And quite often there's a lot of manipulation going on there. And so it's about being aware of that. So you're not trapped by anything. The only way you can not be trapped by anything is to see that you aren't anyone. You're not particularly, you might have hands and you might be 82 years old and you might look a certain way or talk a certain way, but there's no solid being anywhere, including here. If you think there's somebody here, you're going to be paranoid, you're going to protect yourself. But if you see through it, the body's still here, you still have health problems, I certainly do, and you still have emotions come and go in your mind stream because your life is dependently arisen. So of course that's going to happen, but those are what? If you believe them, they delude you. If you don't believe them and you just see them, you just notice, then it's an illusion. Then you realize everything that arises in your mind is an illusion. Even guilt, it's unreal. It has a reality, just like I sometimes use Stephen King's movies because when you're watching them, they seem pretty damn real while you're watching them. Sometimes you can't really watch what's going to happen next because you're so entertained, shall we say, by the story. It's so believable, but it is the same thing as life. Shakespeare was a master at that kind of situation. Yes.
Otis from Indiana asks, what's the best practice for negative speech? I can't control my mouth.
Well, the best thing is shut up, but it sounds like you've been trying to do that. So I feel it looks like the very best thing to do is to understand what the outflows are on a very, very fundamental level, which means the sitting practice of meditation, the way I teach it. I've studied several different ways of meditating. This is the one that I first started with in 1974 when I met Katagiri Roshi. Sit down, hold still, watch what moves. Just observe. Sit in a symmetrical posture. All the senses are open, in particular the eyes. Look at the wall. Nothing's happening there. That sense needs to be open because that sense is not separate from the sense of touch, the sense of taste, the sense of hearing, the sense of smelling, the sense of thinking. And so if that one is open, because that's the one that is saying everything is over there. Sense of hearing doesn't do that. A little bit maybe. It's somewhat directional. Sense of touch doesn't do that because it's your body. Sense of taste is intimate. Sense of smell is intimate. Sense of thinking is intimate. Sense of seeing is dualistic. You're looking at something over there. So that one needs to be open, even though you're only looking a short distance. Practice it. Do it a lot. Practice it the rest of your life. You can do it, Otis. Do you meditate right now? I can't hear you.
I meditate every day. I'm sorry, I had mute on.
What is the style of your practice, if you don't mind sharing it?
It's sitting meditation.
You close
Usually,
your eyes?
Yes, sometimes.
Stop it.
Okay.
Or else continue to close them. I mean, I'm not your authority, but I'm saying if you're talking to me, I'm coming from right around 50 years of trying to understand what this is and understand what others that give me permission, what is happening with them. And when you ask me, I would say, open the eyes, look at the wall. So that sense consciousness is determines what's happening with all the other sense consciousnesses because it is so incredibly reinforcing of otherness. This doesn't mean that someone who is blind is somehow handicapped in some way. Of course not. So, and do a simple practice of just watching what moves. If you have trouble with that instruction, I give that instruction every day right here at 6 p.m. I've been doing it for a few years. Further question, Otis?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Eric from Traverse City has another question.
Eric and Taya?
Yes.
Okay.
If someone appears to be suffering for a perceived mistake, like breaking your coffee cup, or they might even ask for forgiveness directly, instead of taking the forgiveness action or role, like saying, I forgive you, could you remind them that nothing is wrong, or would you still try not to meddle?
I would stay out of that. Don't step into their, nothing is wrong, or don't let them off the hook. Don't put them on a hook. Don't do anything with it. It would be situational. If they would say, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. And you say, that's okay, don't worry about it. You could say that. Those are very simple. Those are not necessarily reinforcing. They're just social structures that we say we're sorry, or sorry we bumped into someone, or sorry we broke their cup. I think it's just it's very simple, not complicated. But don't go in and with some kind of surgical concepts where you're going to go in and fix things for them. Don't do anything with it. Respect people's confusion, which means leave them alone. Don't give anybody advice about anything unless they ask you, or unless you're doing what I'm doing, which I come on here and I basically give you advice with your permission. There's no requirement to attend, and you're not charged a fee. I know of anybody. We charging for this? We are. What are we charging?
As much as I can get.
As much as you can get?
And give.
And give, okay. Okay, but talk to Munoz, she knows stuff. Any final question? Or
Navid bowing.
where?
Navid bowing.
Naveed, what's going on in Iran?
I think it's a calm before the storm, something like that.
Before the storm. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I hope you have a place to shelter.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So my question is, if someone has hurt you, is it okay not wanting to do anything with them?
Yes.
Bowing.
Yeah, it's it's not a formula, not a standard, but it's something I've been saying for a long time, not only to myself, but to others. Is less is better. Especially if you have a bunch of either ors coming to you, should I do that? Should I do this? Should I apologize, or anytime you have a bunch of those showing up, then less is better. Sit back and look at the color of the wall. Look at the back of your hand. Look at the fundamental nature of this. There isn't anything but this. And if you realize this, then everything is like a mirror. What is it reflecting back? It's reflecting everything back. You're reflecting everything towards everything. It's a fundamental understanding, has no location. This separation, this is the illusion that we are deluded by. It's an illusion. The emotions, the feelings, the thoughts that come into your mind stream are illusory. I don't care how much they hurt. And in fact, in fiction, you could even just receive that hurt, because if you fight the hurt, then you generate all kinds of armament. The weapons of concepts, ideas, and you start poking at others, trying to get some satisfaction out of things because other people are causing you grief or causing you harm. No, they're not. There is no solid other, and there's no solid self. You have to realize it. This is a spiritual path, not a mundane path of winning a damn thing. If anything, it's losing everything. Losing. It's like Byron Katie's real early book that she called Losing the Moon. I don't know if you can even, I don't think it's even in print, but it's a great book title. I sometimes say, and I'll say now, if the book title is good, you don't have to read the book. Just read the title over and over again. Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. The Myth of Freedom. Losing the Moon. 108 meditations. Do those. You don't have to read the book. The book is just kind of repetitive.
Are you bowing? Is an apology forgiveness?
I don't know if you can just standardize that. You could say, you could have a lack of understanding or be impolite or unappreciative of someone, and realize that you've done that and apologize and say, I'm sorry about that. And so I don't know if that would be along the lines of what you're talking about. I'm not trying to get rid of apologizing. I'm just saying that it's when it's a really big, gnarly knot in your gut, you somehow need to forgive someone so your own knot in your gut will go away. Look closely at your intention about why you would do anything at all. Go ahead.
2 other questions when you're bowing. This is from Heather.
Which Heather? Toivonen?
She texted some time ago asking you to talk on this, and she couldn't be present tonight, so I'm going to read her question.
Okay.
She said, can Sokuzan speak to while apologizing once to someone with the discomfort of apologizing once as the interaction with that person goes on? She says, I can try to say that another way if you'd like her to, but she's not here, so I'm not quite sure. It sounds like.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
So that's another, I didn't bring it up tonight, but I say if you need to apologize to something and say, I'm sorry, then say it one time. That should be, you don't have to keep apologizing to someone. So you can, if it's a situation where that's just the only thing you can do is just say, I'm sorry about that. No more. Because the first apology probably is about the person. I'm sorry that I said that to you. But another apology on top of that is more like you trying to get them to let you off the hook, which which supports ego in every direction. Yes.
When you bow in. And finally,
This is from Heather.
no, this is my own question that came up, and it's come up before.
Go ahead.
In the 12-step program.
Yes.
There's a step that is called make amends.
Yeah, it's bullshit. I mean, I'm not against anybody in the 12-step program. And there's several people here, maybe more than one, but I know there's a couple of people who actually are 12-step workers who have done the program and help people. All for 12-step program, especially if that's all you can do. If people don't meditate, that's fine. Nobody should be forced to do anything. But 12-step programs have a workability to them that keep people from doing what? Continuing to drink or use drugs or whatever. And it seems to be pretty workable. Sometimes that's all that someone can do. But making amends, this is just more ego bullshit. Pardon my lack of proper speech. I'm just getting motivated, and I feel like that's all that's going to work. It's just bull. It's to make amends. It's just it's. I would need some questions about it to say much else other than just don't do that. You don't need to do that. That doesn't mean you don't need to talk to the person and possibly say that you're sorry for something that happened. Of course, something about making amends doesn't work. I've had a couple people come and make amends to me who are in that program and come, and to me it just looks like they're just going through the motions. They're making amends. They're going through their make amends, and it's just a proliferation of ignorance reinforced by strong self-centeredness that wants to look like it's sorry. It just doesn't work. And you could say, any of you could come back and say, well, yeah, that worked great for me when I went through that, and that was really good, and other people have gone through that, and it's been very helpful. Then I would say, then do that. But it's not awareness practice. It's controlling, trying to get a healthy ego. That's what it's about. Even though their 12-step is about God or the higher power as you see it or something like that. There is no higher power. Even the Buddha is not a higher power. And as I say hundreds of times, 58 times, you don't have to believe me. I don't know anything.
Kayun bowing.
What?
Oh, I was just saying that I was bowing. Kayun bowing.
Oh, go ahead and bow again.
Kayun bowing.
Okay, go ahead, Kayun.
I forgot what I was going to say.
I forgot what I was going to answer.
Is there something about making amends that's in conflict with the precept about not dwelling on past mistakes, bowing?
That might be a way of addressing it. Yes, don't do anything with that. Just like because that tends to support some kind of a self-centered rotation that's happening there. Just like with Greg's difficulty over some stuff that happened in the past with someone his wife, I think, passed on. It's not. It's just energy that rotates around that protects a self-centeredness. So it needs to be seen that way. That's how it looks here. Dwelling on past mistakes keeps that ego generating failure. I've been terrible. I'm never going to be able to be forgiven or let off the hook, and feel sad I know what that's like. As I said earlier, I feel really sad about when I stole things from people. This has been a while ago. I haven't stolen anything recently.
Kayun bowing. When I was younger, I also would pilfer things and steal things. And I've wondered as an adult if there is some gesture that could be made about giving to even things out, or if that's just extra.
It seems a little, if it happens spontaneously, maybe there's something to that, but to have some kind of a strategy about slowly, there's some kind of guilt under the radar there that you would like to address, and so you'd like to give away something to others. So I wouldn't go in that direction. And I also, if someone feels really strongly in that area, then I would respect that. Somebody really needs to go that direction. Just like I don't really try to get people to become monks or to receive precepts. That's up to you. And if somebody decides they receive precepts and they don't want to do this anymore, I respect that too. I think it's harder to give away or give up the bodhisattva vow, but some people do it in different ways. It's no way to figure it out. There are too many moving parts, so to speak, in the illusion that we are deluded by, because we can't see that there isn't anything separate from anything else. That doesn't mean you can see what's in the back of someone's garage in Toledo on 1418 Main Street. Can't see everything, but you can see this. So that's why you want the depth. Look at the surface. You try to go into the depth. Those are inventions. That's parikalpita. That's the imaginary nature. It's not paratantra, the dependently arisen, nor is it paranishmana, or the perfected nature, which is seeing what this is. It's perfect. There's nothing to fix. It doesn't mean the world isn't full of insanity. Of course it is. Otis says, I always felt like failure refers to an event, not the person. Okay, yeah, that's refers to an event. Michael, you got a response to Otis?
No.
Okay.
My question is, it seems like you're saying whenever we begin to plan, we stop observing.
Somewhat.
And that the plan's really never.
Well, you've heard me say, if you know it's a plan because it didn't work, you can't have a plan that doesn't have, oh, that needs to be changed to this in order to fit through that particular opening. So things need to be changed. But yes, if you're planning on something, you've abandoned what's in front of you for what you think is in front of you, and you're strategizing around it. And to some extent, that is workable. You can build a house, and you can attend a university and get a credential and have a job, but there's a whole lot of variables there.
If I'm looking at fear and then I decide I need a plan to control that fear, that seems to be.
But
where things go awry.
What's your question?
How do I stop planning?
Probably won't be able to, but you can just be aware that that's what's happening. A lot of sitting meditation will help you see more clearly whatever is coming or going in your living room or in your mind stream or in your life stream. You'll be able to watch just the characteristics that come up that are fearful or that are enticing or magnetizing or seductive. Just observe. Train yourself to observe by shikantaza, practice of shikantaza, and studying the Buddha's Dharma, studying down through the centuries, all of these teachings that using words and language point to the nature of that which is ineffable and is impossible to describe, but they're pointers. So it's awareness, it's not correcting anything particularly. Okay, I think we can close.
We'll return to sitting until service at 7:40.
Okay, very good. For those of you who want to stay, please, you're welcome, and others will go different directions. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And thank you for all of your questions.